Well, it finally happened. The console wars are now over, and Xbox just shot itself in the foot, reloaded the gun, and did it again for good measure. I mean, with them announcing that Halo Campaign Evolved will be officially coming to PlayStation, rest in peace Xbox, you didn't die a hero, you lived long enough to become an overpriced Netflix subscription for games. Now, some of you 30-year-old boomers are probably watching this video and having some Vietnam flashbacks of 360 lobbies back when you would call a random person a racial slur over a game of Halo 3, and somehow still making friends. Oh, the good old days. But now looking at Xbox as a console now, it feels like a ghost of its former self. It feels like it became something else entirely and not in a good way. So it kind of got me wondering on how on earth did Xbox, the console of gaming we used to know and love, go from this beauty to whatever the heck this is now. But seriously, what is that? A toaster? Now, to give a little history lesson, the original Xbox console was released on November 15, 2001, a year after the PlayStation 2 launched. Now, while the first Xbox console didn't have quite a ton of, memorable exclusive that the PlayStation 2 or GameCube had, it did give us one thing that changed everything. Halo. Developed by the infamous studio Bungie, which, we all know Bungie, right? Oh boy. The game will go on to be one of the biggest sensations the world would ever see. I mean, it gave us Master Chief, gaming's most recognizable character by far. It was revolutionary. So many people loved the game, and I was one of those people. I remember staying up all night playing co-op with a friend, getting mad at each other for driving off a map and dying, and pretending that Mountain Dew and Doritos were part of a balanced diet. Life was good, and with the success of Halo 1 and 2, it helped push Xbox to new heights. Fast forward to November 2005, and Microsoft drops the Xbox 360, and thus beginning the console wars. Now, if you were alive in the mid-2000s, you remember this era very vividly. You get home from school, hop online, and within 5 minutes, you were being called slurs by a random 12-year-old on Adderall. I know, sounds great, right? Now, keep in mind that this was a time when the internet became a bit more accessible for people, as well as a lot of players' tastes started shifting away from single-player games, such as like Jak and Daxter, and more towards multiplayer games. And this, in my opinion, was the golden age of the FPS genre, and Xbox was king. It was during this time we got some of the biggest FPS games for the 360, Gears of War, Call of Duty 4, Halo 3, Battlefield Bad Company 2. Now, unfortunately, you did have to pay $50 for Xbox Live, so if you were a poor teenager like myself, and unless you got your parents to pay for Xbox Live, you were screwed. But at the time, no one really cared. We were broke, addicted, and proud. Now, PlayStation did try to compete with free online, but most people didn't want to play Little Big Planet. They just wanted to chainsaw aliens in Gears of War. It was a simpler time when exclusives mattered, friendships ended over console choices, and your headset smelled like old Cheetos and broken dreams. Now, some of you younger folks are probably thinking, why didn't you get a PS3 and play online for free? That seems stupid to pay extra to play online when you already have internet. And while you are correct, my young Padawan, the thing is that Sony didn't really have any exclusive multiplayer games for the PS3. Sony was mostly known for making single-player games, and if you ask anyone who was around during that time what game they played, most of them would say the big three: Gears of War, Halo 3, or Call of Duty. And speaking of Call of Duty, Microsoft also had a DLC contract with Activision that gave Xbox players DLC content a month earlier than PlayStation players. So unless you only cared about playing Sony exclusives, it was more logical to just go with Team Xbox. And it pretty much stayed like this until the next-gen consoles. And that's when things started to change for Xbox, and not in a good way. See, by the time the Xbox One and PS4 came out, we had 8 years of multiplayer fun. And sure, those were some good times. I mean, I had a lot of good memories during that era. However, as the saying goes, things don't last forever, and eventually people will get tired of the same online multiplayer experience, especially when Activision is pumping out a damn new COD every year. I mean, holy crap, can we get a break or something? Jeez. So when 2013 rolled around, the Xbox One launched, and Microsoft, in all its infinite wisdom, decided to make a console $100 more expensive than the PS4 and told players, You can't share games. Also, it's always online. Also, we love DRM. Also, we hate your guts. They didn't really say that, but I'm just throwing that there for extra, flavor. Meanwhile, Sony came out and said, "Hey, ours is cheaper, and we actually like fun." And just like that, Xbox went from king of multiplayer to the core gesture of bad marketing. PS4 absolutely stomped Xbox One into the dirt. I mean, that's a huge sales gap, but it's not surprising considering Microsoft's PR disasters and the incredible exclusive the PS4 offered. I mean, we got masterpieces like The Last of Us and Spider-Man, plus revived classics like God of War and Ratchet and Clank. Heck, even Persona 5 got me hooked on the Persona series. And for Xbox, we had Crackdown 3 and whatever this is. Cool, I guess. So while Microsoft was busy burning studios and milking Halo until the poor thing needed life support, Sony went back to the drawing board and kept feeding us cinematic masterpieces. And then probably came the biggest change for every console, crossplay. The beginning of the end for the console wars. And it all started with a game called Rocket League. See, in 2019, Rocket League asked Microsoft, PlayStation, and Nintendo to allow players to play with each other regardless of the console they own. And once all three platforms started to let people play across platforms, it didn't matter what console you own. You could play with your friends anywhere, which made choosing between PS4 and Xbox less about loyalty and more about which one actually has good games. And spoiler, that answer wasn't Xbox. So combine the higher console price, mediocre online shooters, and crossplay, it didn't make much sense to get an Xbox One when the PS4 could play most of the same games on top of their exclusives. Now, Microsoft tried to bounce back with Game Pass, their Netflix for games, that allowed you to play games for a low subscription cost, and it was actually a good idea, it was just horribly timed. At launch, it had like 4 decent titles and a bunch of indie games nobody really asked for. Then came 2020, the PS5 and the Xbox Series X launches, or as I like to call it, the generation of what the hell are we doing? I mean, seriously, the Series X had a name so confusing, it sounded like an Excel formula. You couldn't have named it Xbox 2 or 720 or anything else? But in either case, both consoles cost at $500, and both had 0 exclusives at launch. And the games we did get, we got Anthem, Suicide Squad, Redfall, and Concord. A parade of AAA disasters that made Cyberpunk 2077 look like a documentary about competence. But besides the mountains and mountains of failed games, it seemed like neither console had exclusives that were decent enough to justify paying $500. Not only that, Xbox's one real advantage, Game Pass, was now on PC, meaning that there was literally no reason to buy an Xbox. So at this point, Xbox wasn't competing anymore, it was quietly fading into irrelevance. And that brings us to 2025, the year Microsoft said, you know what? Let's make Game Pass 50% more expensive. And shockingly, people weren't thrilled. Wow, who would have thought? Subscriptions got canceled faster than Concord's EOS. The website even crashed from the mass exodus. And I don't blame people. I didn't really use the Game Pass service that much because I didn't see much of a reason to get one. But for some who just wanted to play the new Call of Duty and some other games for $20 a month, it was a pretty good deal. But with the price increase, there isn't much of a point anymore. I mean, the fact that they thought that adding Ubisoft games of all games, will make it more appealing. But just when fans thought it couldn't get any worse, boom, Halo Combat Evolved announced for PlayStation. The game that built Xbox is now helping sell PS5s. That's like Nintendo putting Mario on a PlayStation controller and calling it strategic synergy. Now, don't get me wrong, I think it's great that people who own a PlayStation will now be able to experience Halo. I'm fine with games being cross-platform. It's great for players all around. It gives people options to choose what device they want to play their games on, and that's amazing. But at the same time, it's sad watching Xbox, once a titan of gaming, turn into a ghost of itself. The console that defined online gaming doesn't even know why it exists, and I'm going to miss that rivalry between the two consoles. Seeing people debate on which console was better, Xbox or PlayStation. I'm gonna miss those times. So, is Xbox officially dead? Not yet, but it's on life support, and Microsoft's charging $30 a month to visit a hospital. At this point, Xbox isn't a console, it's a service, a brand built on nostalgia, coasting off Game Pass and the faint smell of Halo's ashes. So yeah, Xbox might live on as a logo and as an app, but the Xbox we knew, the one that defined an era of gaming chaos, streaming lobbies, and unforgettable memories, that Xbox is gone. But hey, at least we still have Nintendo, right?
Pokemon Legends ZA Mega Dimension DLC.